everyone, welcome to video lecture on heat transfer. Myself Khushbu Shah, Assistant Professor in Chemical Engineering Department of LJ Institute of Engineering and Technology. In our previous session of heat transfer, we have started types of evaporator. We have seen that basically there are two types of evaporator. One is natural circulation evaporator and second is forced circulation evaporator. In natural circulation evaporator, there are two types. In our previous session, we have started the natural circulation evaporators. In that, we have already covered two types. One is open pan evaporator and second is horizontal tube evaporator. Now, in today's session, we will going to see remaining two types of natural circulation evaporator. So, let's start. Vertical tube evaporator, which is also a type of natural circulation evaporator, we have seen that in our last session, right? So let's see what is vertical tube evaporator and how it works. See, this is the figure of vertical tube evaporator. If you remember the figure of horizontal tube evaporator, you can see the difference between that two, horizontal tube evaporator and vertical tube evaporator. The basic difference between that horizontal tube evaporator and this vertical tube evaporator is this, see here. The position of this tube bundle. See the arrow. The position of this tube bundle. If you remember, in horizontal tube evaporator, the position of this heating element is horizontal. And in this, the position of heating element is vertical. That is the basic difference between that two, and that's why we call it as horizontal tube evaporator and vertical tube evaporator. Right? So, in the figure you can see, this is the heating element which is placed vertically. This is the steam inlet. This is condensate outlet. The feed enters from here. Feed is also known as dilute solution, as we want to concentrate it, right? So, dilute solution is the feed and this concentrated solution is our product, right? So, and after evaporation, the water vapor which is vaporized is collected from the top, right? So, in construction part, this vertical tube evaporator consists of a vertical cylindrical shell having short vertical tube bundle. The height of this tube bundle is very short, and that's why sometimes this type of evaporator is also known as short tube vertical evaporator. Remember this also, because the next type of evaporator which we are going to see is known as the long tube evaporator or falling film evaporator. So this thing you have to remember. This vertical, when we say that vertical tube evaporator, that means short tube vertical evaporator. And this short tube vertical evaporator is also known as calandria type evaporator. So, simple vertical tube evaporator, also known as short tube evaporator, also known as calandria type evaporator. So, you have to remember all the names. Fine. So, this vertical tube evaporator consists of a vertical cylindrical cell having short vertical tube bundle. The vapor outlet is provided at the top cover, while thick liquid discharge or concentrated solution discharge is provided at the bottom. Right? Now, the second difference compared to the horizontal tube evaporator. In this evaporator, the solution to be evaporated is inside the tubes and steam flows outside the tube. If you remember, in horizontal tube evaporator, the steam is flowing inside the tube and the feed which is to be concentrated is outside the tube. While in this case of vertical tube evaporator, opposite to that, the solution to be concentrated is flowing inside the tubes and steam flows outside the tubes. This is very important point of difference between horizontal tube evaporator and vertical tube evaporator. Again I am repeating, in vertical tube evaporator, solution to be evaporated or the feed solution is flowing inside the tubes and the steam flows outside the tube, opposite to horizontal tube evaporator. Fine. So this is very important point of difference between the horizontal tube evaporator and vertical tube evaporator. Another thing, thin liquid is introduced to the tube side and steam into the steam chest, as I told you. And the liquor covers the top of the tubes. As liquor, that means the feed solution. As it flows outside the tubes, so liquor covers the top of the tubes. Heat transfer to the boiling liquid inside the tubes takes place from the condensing steam on outside of the tubes. So heat transfer to boiling liquid occurs inside the tubes, as the feed solution is inside the tubes and the condensing steam is outside the tube. So heat transfer takes place between the liquid and the steam. Right. Now the vapor which is formed will rise through the tubes, come to the liquid surface, from which they are disengaged into the vapor space and removed from the vapor outlet. As the feed solution is inside the tubes, so boiling or evaporation takes place inside the tubes. So vapor which is formed will travel through the upward of the tubes, and then it travels above the evaporator body and it removed from the top of the body. Right? The major advantages of using vertical tube evaporator is it is relatively inexpensive and gives high heat transfer coefficient. These are the two major advantages of using vertical tube evaporator. Which are that? First, it is relatively inexpensive, and second, it gives higher heat transfer coefficient. And the disadvantages include floor space required is large and not suitable for viscous liquid. When we are using this vertical tube evaporator, the floor space required is large and it is not suitable for the viscous liquid. When we have to handle the viscous liquid, we cannot go for vertical tube evaporator. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of vertical tube evaporator and how it works and how it constructed. So this is the third type of natural circulation evaporator. Now let's see the last and fourth type of natural circulation evaporator is falling film evaporator. This falling film evaporator is also known as long tube evaporator, long tube vertical evaporator. Previously we have seen the short tube vertical evaporator, which is also known as calandria type evaporator, and this is the long tube vertical evaporator, which is also known as falling film evaporator. So if you see in the short tube vertical evaporator, the height of this vertical heating element is short in previous case, while in this case the height of this vertical heating element is high in this case, and that's why we call it as falling film evaporator. See the construction of this falling film evaporator. See, this is the long vertical heating element, this is the vapor outlet, this is the steam inlet, this is condensate outlet, this is our vertical heating element, right? And the feed inlet is provided from here. In this long tube vertical heating element, it consists of a long tubular element incorporating tubes 25 mm to 50 mm in diameter and 4 to 5 meter in length. While we are designing such type of evaporator, we must have to meet this specification. In long tube evaporator, the diameter of the tube varies between 25 mm to 50 mm and the height varies between 4 to 5 meter or the length. Right? Another thing, in tubular heating element projects into vapor space. See here, this portion. I am talking about this portion. This heating element extends in the upper part of the evaporator body. So the tubular heating element projects into the vapor space for removing the entering liquid from the vapor. If there is a presence of some liquid droplets into the vapor, that removes in the vapor space. Right? And return pipe, this is the return pipe. See this. The return pipe connecting this vapor space to the bottom of the exchanger for natural circulation of unvaporized liquid. This is the additional feature of this falling film evaporator. The return pipe is connected for connecting the vapor space and exchanger outlet for the natural circulation of unvaporized liquid. Right? So, in this evaporator, the liquid to be concentrated is in the tubes and condensing steam surrounds the tube, same as in short tube vertical evaporator. The liquid which is to be concentrated is inside the tubes and the steam which is to be condensed surrounds the tube. That means it is outside the tubes. In this evaporator, feed enters the bottom of the tubes as you can see in the figure. The feed which is to be concentrated is introduced from the bottom of the tubes. Gets heated by condensing steam and start to boil. As it gets heat from the steam, it starts to boil. And then the mixture of vapor and liquid is used from the top of the tubes. Right? And finally it impinges at high velocity on deflector. Impinges, that means it impacts on the deflector, which is provided in the vapor space. What is the function of deflector? Deflector separates that unvaporized liquid portion from vapor. And that's why then the separated liquid enters the bottom of the exchanger from that return pipe. And the part of this liquid is taken as a product. Right? So the function of deflector is to separate the unvaporized liquid which is present in the vapor and then it goes into the return pipe and the separated liquid enters the bottom of the exchanger and part of the liquid is taken as a product. And this type of long tube vertical evaporator or falling film evaporator is widely used for foamy and frothy liquors. Because in this type of evaporator only such type of deflector is used. In another types we are not using deflector. And the main function of deflector is to remove the unvaporized liquid from the vapor. And that's why this type of evaporator is mainly used in foamy and frothy liquor. Right? So, I am completing this session here and today's session we have completed another two types of natural circulation evaporator which are the long tube vertical evaporator and short tube vertical evaporator. So, I am completing this session here. I hope the session is clear to all. Thank you.